Only those chosen by fate can wield these divine weapons. These weapons are the physical shape of a person's soul. Because of this, each piece of equipment gets its own special power. A noble family once defeated the evil god, the catastrophe Dush. From the moment they are born, these warriors are given everything, with bodies made for fighting, amazing skills for battle, and holy weapons that are truly incredible. Born into this family with dreams of becoming a hero and wielding divine weapons, things were supposed to go that way until they didn't. But during the sacred ceremony, a person's divine weapon appears. He found out in the end that he wouldn't get one. It was the very first time in his family's history that this disaster happened, making him their first great failure. Because of this, he was seen as less than the rest and faced endless teasing, becoming a public joke to everyone. The second son of the family, Zane, had no sympathy in his heart. He thought that useless folks like the protagonist, who couldn't get a divine weapon, didn't belong there at all. He used this as an excuse to give the protagonist an accidental face massage that made his features look better for a short while. Jessica and Sarah just stood there watching, with Jessica even seeming to get a kick out of the humiliation. Sarah, however, didn't like what was going on. She tried to stop it, but Jessica knocked her to the ground because she was there only to watch the weak suffer, not to help. Jessica, stepping on his friend's head, made him worried, but since he was caught in an involuntary massage, he had to forget about it for now. His opponent claimed that those dirty hybrids are too close to one another. As he knocked the hero down, he kept spitting insults right in his face. Since they were born to concubines, they were always mocked and made to feel small by others who called them mutts. After losing the fight, he apologized to Sarah, saying he was too weak to keep her safe. She beamed with a big smile, telling him not to worry because she promised to always be right there by his side. But the boy refused to stay there, telling her he would grow stronger on his own, no matter if he never found a divine weapon. He also vowed to guard her with his very life. She hugged him tight and thanked him for keeping his promise. But he couldn't keep that promise because just a few days later, he was kicked out of the family. He instantly fell into a rage-filled grief, knowing she would be hunted, and he vowed to become strong enough to rescue her. With a normal weapon, he could never defeat the knight's divine one, so he had to grow even stronger to stand a chance. In truth, he had no other choice left. He set the money-filled bag down on a shop counter. Holding up the gold coins, he asked for one weapon of every kind, a strange request indeed. The shopkeeper thought the boy was ready to start a fight. 2 years went by while he lived apart from his family. He kept moving forward, riding his horse along the way. The boy had picked up a few tricks, but he still didn't own a God-sent weapon. He faced several dangerous monsters standing right in front of him. He had plenty of weapons at his disposal to fight them. He was ready to start the fight because he had mastered every move and was now a terrifying force. He even carried a gun perfect for collecting money from people who couldn't pay their debts. The creatures had no way to fight back against him. When the fighting finally stopped, a hooded stranger kept watching until he decided to speak to the boy. He wondered if the boy really always carried all those weapons, and if that worry came from someone who failed to get a weapon blessed by the gods. He'd long since forgotten the trap he'd set, and was now hunting for someone he could trust, someone with the spark to grow into a great hero. The only thing the boy truly saw from that strange figure was a hand glowing with fierce blue light, shooting a beam of energy at him even as the man spoke like he had lost his mind. A bright object stood before him, looking like a weapon, which made him truly amazed by what was happening. The man told the boy he could trust him with the weapon. The object stayed stuck in the ground, glowing as it let loose a burst of energy. He thought it was a sword and stepped closer until his hand touched it, only to discover he'd grabbed nothing but the sheath. The Holy Sheath of Avalon is a magical cloak that lets you put away your mighty sword and give it to someone else. Handed down from one generation to the next, it now holds the weapons of the 5 greatest heroes in history. The boy is driven to master that powerful weapon, knowing that whoever holds it will own the strongest tools in the whole world. Ever since that day, 3 years have gone by while he trains with his mentor and wields a dragon, sword soaring through the sky. The creature lunged at them in a rage, its fire ready to wipe out everyone on Earth. But the protagonist didn't care about the heat, looking totally unimpressed by it. He quickly called upon Avalon, and the glowing white sheath instantly appeared in his hand. He gripped it so tightly, like he was ready to pull the sword free. He closed his eyes, gathered all his strength, and made the power appear right before him. Suddenly, the holy object started to shine with a powerful light. Then, another light appeared in the boy's hand, and a windshield for Achilles began to shape itself in his grip. It was strong enough to build a shield that could stop the dragon's attack. To strike back, he raised the Stormhammer Mage on her. It stood ready to crush the beast, springing onto the dragon with a hammer to strike a devastating blow. The strike hit with such force that it smashed the creature's head straight into the dirt. With just one strike, his mentor proclaimed that he had finally mastered Avalon. He told him he could visit his sister because not even an S-rank paladin could stop him now. Those words lit up his eyes with hope. With a huge smile, he promised to follow the instructions right away. 5 years went by since he was banished, and now he had enough power to save his sister. As he moved closer, he prayed that Sarah was okay because he was rushing to her to save her from that terrible place. But when he finally arrived, he found that the fire had eaten everything. He didn't know what might have gone wrong, so he instantly felt scared. While surrounded by fire, he noticed many banners being lifted up. He instantly spotted the symbols, which belonged to a different duke named Roth Windsor. A fierce civil war was raging, and things were certainly not looking good. He burst through the castle doors, looking everywhere for his sister with a desperate heart. As we walked toward the huge gate that was already cracking open a little, we could almost feel the magic inside waiting for us. As soon as he stepped into the hall, he found himself facing a heartbreaking sight, a badly wounded body lying on the floor. It felt like a nightmare, as if this could never really have happened. His heart broke when he saw the body of his beloved sister. He wrapped his arms around her, feeling a deep worry for her. The girl didn't react at all. It seemed like the worst had already happened. He remembered the words he'd spoken to her and the promise he had broken. So crushed, a wild scream tore through the air. Even after he finally mastered his power, he still couldn't do the one thing that had driven him for all these years. A sharp blast of power was flying straight at him. The thing went straight through the boy's body. A sharp point had stabbed right through his chest. Someone else was there with him too. That scary power definitely came from a warrior as strong as his rank. The man knew the banished girl named Belle, but the boy couldn't figure out how he recognized her. But that didn't matter anymore, since he was finally going to meet his sister in the afterlife. This was the one who had taken his sister's life. He lifted his blade to cut down the hero, who was so lost in his own grief that he could only destroy everything around him. But already worn down and weak, he could do nothing at all. His chest was stabbed with even greater force. After those dark moments, he stood before the priest again. He stared at his own hands in disbelief, unable to understand why he had been sent to that place. He stared at the familiar stained glass, knowing he was inside his family's cathedral during a ceremony, certain that he had died. Since this was the ceremony, there was only one reason. He had come back just in time. The priest told him to hold his hands tight and picture his holy gear in his mind. But the boy remembered exactly what happened the first time. At this stage of his life, he hadn't yet inherited Avalon and was already braced for banishment, ready to start his journey anew. But then something unexpected occurred, leaving him stunned. He knew beyond any doubt that what he was looking at was Avalon. He knew this time he'd try everything all over again. Now that he had the power to change fate, he could finally rewrite his destiny. Now the real story of his life was finally starting. The boy stared at the sheath in his hands, knowing exactly what power it could unlock. It was so strange that even the priest, who had never seen anything like it, had to speak up about it. He knew exactly what the priest would say before he spoke, because he was sure a fight with that sheath was impossible. Caught by surprise, the priest admitted that wasn't what he had meant to say. Even so, the confident boy told him not to worry, for that was his greatest divine weapon. Now he walked through the castle halls searching for his sister, knowing that if he had truly gone back in time, she was still alive. His recent past was still fresh in his mind, and he was very worried about Sarah. Finally, he stood right in front of her room's door. The girl sitting by the window heard the door open. Sarah greeted him with a big smile, showing that she was very much alive and well. She glowed with the same beauty he had remembered. When the girl saw her brother, who wasn't anyone she expected, she walked right up to him to give him a big hug. She also wanted to know how his special event had turned out. The boy didn't say a word. He was just so happy to see her still alive. Sarah was so startled by the sudden hug that she immediately wondered if something had happened to her brother. He still couldn't forgive himself for failing to save her before. The hurt he felt was still so sharp that he couldn't bear it. He refused to let his sister suffer like that again, finally able to keep his promise. The girl didn't wait long before she complained that the hug was too tight. Even so, she was perfectly fine and really pleased to have gotten it. Only then did she finally see the mark on the boy's face. Tears rolled down his face, and she couldn't figure out why he was crying. She ran her hand over his head, whispering that everything would be okay since they had each other. Hearing those words made the boy feel warm inside, and it turned out he was from Alabama. His annoying brother walked in and saw how well the guys were getting along. He had been searching for Belle for quite a while. That was Zane, and he was truly the saddest of them all. The little jerk claimed he'd already heard the news. His brother got a strange item at the ceremony because the priest loved to meddle in everyone's business and was a real gossip. Bell gave a nod, confirming that the sheath had indeed reached him. His brother couldn't stop himself from showing how much he looked down on him. He couldn't stop laughing as he said the sheath wasn't a weapon and looked perfect for that poor soul. He knew he couldn't fight like that, and the two of them were just a pair of fools. He had to squeeze his fist until his knuckles turned white. He wanted to fix the little jerk's teeth without permission, but instead gave him a chance to apologize, which the jerk ignored because he never saw his half-brother standing up for himself. So the protagonist warned him once more to take back his words. Feeling challenged, the little jerk's hatred grew even stronger. Now, he was going to show that Concubine's son exactly what happens when you cross him. Unfortunately for the little jerk, the protagonist had trained hard for years with his mentor. With a solid punch to the gut that made the kid wish he'd never eaten his lunch, the boy was finally going to learn some hard lessons. He crashed to the floor and curled into a tight ball, probably because a hit to his liver had made his blood pressure drop. The protagonist looked down at the rude kid and warned him to stop threatening Sarah or he'd get a serious lesson in manners. So the kid, feeling angry, called his half-brother a bastard. Now he was ready to raise the violence to a whole new level. Holding his God-given weapon, he vowed to burn his brother's skin until the younger one begged for mercy. I was furious at the rude kid, but since he wasn't really fighting hard, I'll just let it go. He told Sarah to step back because trouble was about to roll in. But he calmed her down first, promising that everything would turn out okay. He swept right through that tricky spot as if it was nothing. He readied himself for the fight by pulling the great sword Avalon into his hand. Now he held the strange, secret sheath. His brother couldn't believe he could be knocked out by something that wasn't even a weapon. After all, he was just an E-rank paladin, and a bastard like him would never have chance. That mattered a lot, because Aladdins were split into ranks based on their strength, starting as F rank when they got their divine weapon and moving up to E rank once they learned to channel mana into it. From D rank and up, that same mana could also be used to unleash special attacks. To go past B rank, you had to learn how to make your gear do things others couldn't. It was weird that little jerk kept bragging about being E rank, even though he had so much growing up to do. The protagonist wasn't even a little bit rattled by this. His huge confidence just made the little jerk even angrier. He didn't just get cheeky. He claimed his brother was being adorable. That was the final blow, and he was ready to crush the mutiny with all his might. Sarah grew afraid, sure that things were about to get really dangerous. He placed his hands on the sheath and called forth the Sword of Light. Suddenly, a massive and terrifyingly strong sword appeared right in front of them. The little jerk couldn't believe it, because his fiery weapons did no damage against that thing. And on top of that, he had no clue what that sword actually was. The sudden counterattack made the little jerk stumble and lose his footing. What shocked him most was that his holy blade had been sliced open by that sword. The boy watched in terror, knowing he had been completely beaten. He still couldn't understand what had happened, and he was certain there was nothing inside the sheath. As the hero stepped closer, he asked if the man was truly content or ready to beg for forgiveness. Acting like a sore loser, he claimed he'd been tricked and said he didn't know the boy had a weapon. If he had known the truth, he never would have attacked because he was actually just a coward who even threatened to never forget it. Then he ran out of the room, terrified and leaving his underwear in ruins. The hero stayed right behind him, knowing the trouble wasn't finished yet. Now he held a fire-breathing, lead-spitting machine aimed right at Ragnarok. With a tiny movement to line up his aim, he let fly one bullet. The poor soul tried to run away, knowing a bullet had just whistled past his ear and punched a hole in the wall right in front of him. He stared at the bullet's hole, and his fear grew even bigger. He felt like he was slowly losing his way as everything got more and more tangled. It made no sense for the boy to suddenly be holding a different weapon. He just swung his sword, and since he could only hold one divine weapon, there was no way he had another one. The protagonist told him not to forget this and warned him to stay away from Sierra, leaving it up to him to decide what to do next. And since the little jerk had run out of underwear to ruin, his fear just kept growing. He looked at the little jerk with cold, shark-like eyes and warned him that messing with him would get a hole in his forehead. With no choice but to flee for his life, the little jerk bolted away just as the protagonist sheathed his divine weapon. Sarah, who had seen it all, was completely blown away. She was okay, but she needed to know if those weapons belonged to her brother as his divine gear. He gently reminded her that he had already told her she could let him take care of everything. The girl thought it was awesome, and all the hero wanted was to keep guarding that beautiful smile. He promised himself he'd never lose anyone else, while somewhere else that little jerk wanted to tell everyone what had happened. He ran straight to his father to tell the Duke that he'd been treated like a dog. The Duke was fascinated to see that Belle had been given many powerful gifts from the gods. The little jerk insisted it wasn't normal, claiming Belle had made a pact with Beale's lone shark bub, which meant she had to be banished right away. But the Duke paid no mind to his words, too caught up in the idea of having a powerful mane. He stood up from his throne and ignored that annoying guy. Curious about where his dad was going, he found out his father was off to meet Belle. He had to see it with his own eyes to believe it was real. After that happened, the boy had to take a break and rest for a bit. He climbed into bed to rest and heal. He had won the fight, even though he was still trapped in a child's body. He was so tired because he still couldn't control his mana the way he wanted to. What looked like a fireball actually turned out to be just an ordinary shot. He was still at Frank's, knowing he had to get stronger, but also realizing he couldn't stay at this power level for long. He started thinking back to the fight he had seen. Those were the Roth Windsorers. That symbol was theirs to own. They were the family they had been fighting against for a long time. It could have been anything that started the fight, but the man who attacked him surely came from that family. This time, things would be different because he was going to protect his sister. To make that happen, he also had to earn respect from the people in his own family. The doors to his room flew wide open. The boy stared at the new arrival. It had been a long time since they last saw each other, and he was totally confused about why his dad was there. 20 years ago, Galleon stood alone against an evil god and achieved great victories in that massive battle. He sliced through the dark land with only his sword, earning the name Singer of the Sword. And as he stood next to his father with a little jerk beside them, he finally understood why his dad had arrived. He was being blamed for something, but it was the perfect time for him. The quickest way to get respect was to catch the head of the family's eye. He bowed low to show his respect to the Duke. The old man told the boy how much he had changed since they last saw each other. But this time, he came like a father to ask him to just let go. Belle spoke with steady calm, saying it couldn't be done, for one wrong word could ruin his chance before the Duke, so he had to be careful. The old man found himself completely won over by the surprising wisdom of a young kid. He asked the boy to stand, and he did, promising to stay and act as the Duke as the boy wished. Right away, he filled the room with an intense presence. The Duke's pressure was so scary that he made sure his sons never fought, because sibling conflicts were strictly forbidden. Belle's face showed a little bit of regret, while the little jerk was sure the bastard was going to get punished soon. No one in that house could withstand the Duke's heavy pressure, but the boy had already found his footing and stood firm. He told us that he and his little sister had been bullied by people. Hearing this confession, the Duke asked if his orders had been broken because of childishness. The boy nodded to say he had no regrets, and the Duke asked if he truly didn't mind breaking his orders. Belle warned that leaving the ones you love behind would be a shame even worse than breaking your oath as a paladin. He would fight to keep his sister safe, no matter who stood on the other side, even if it was his own older brother. As he talked, the Duke watched him closely. This was the road the knight chose to take. The Duke pressed the sharp point of his sword against him. He wondered what would happen if he stepped into his opponent's shoes. But the boy stood his ground and wouldn't even pause to think, even if the person he faced was the Duke. The old man tried to scare him with his scary look, but he ended up admiring his son's bravery instead. He decided to brush off the whole mess, leaving the little jerk fuming. Watching him, it was clear he felt let down that Zane had bullied his own sister and then walked away from the fight empty-handed. The little jerk didn't expect to get his comeuppance so quickly. The Duke said he should feel ashamed and never show his face again. He saw that Belle was right and admitted it took guts for him to speak up, even though he knew what her words would cost him. The boy offered an apology for his recklessness, but his father told him that was exactly the kind of bold attitude a catastrophe knight needed to have. Now, he just wanted the boy to show him his power. He asked to see his divine army. The boy did exactly what was asked. A soft blue light started glowing between his hands, and the Duke was even more amazed. That sheath was Avalon, his holy weapon. But the Duke didn't understand it at all. He had heard whispers about a legendary sword said to hold the spirit of the first paladin inside it. Great heroes throughout history have all held this mighty tool in their hands. He asked Belle if the boy really used both a sword and a gun, and she said yes. He said the weapons were hidden away in Avalon. To prove his point, he showed both of them to his dad. Right away, the Duke started to think it might not be possible at all. To his total surprise, he learned the boy could only use 2 weapons at once, even though 3 more were waiting in a sheath. That boy was clearly meant to become the next hero. He told him that he had no use for the weak. From that moment forward, he set his sights on a bright future. As he walked out of the room, he said to keep working hard. As the doors finally shut, the boy could finally rest because that heavy pressure had been too much to bear. He just needed to keep getting stronger, but it was a shame he was stuck in a child's body. He needed to rush to rank status by hunting monsters and soaking up their mana to get stronger. He would head straight to the nearest forest to hunt down some orcs. I had finally given in and fallen leaving the head of one of those monsters lying on the ground, cut off from its body. The killing went on in the woods. The creatures had no chance, for something even fiercer had arrived. The beast had teeth as sharp as iron swords. It roared so loud that everyone knew it was in charge. That forest definitely brought back memories from the past. After being cast out in his past life, he spent some time training in that place. But something felt wrong, since he had been walking for a while without seeing any monsters. Tucked deep inside the bushes, something was keeping a close eye on him. He finally ran into some orcs, but they were all chopped up. Now their bones were just another piece of nature's decoration. It was a sight so scary and strange that no one had ever seen before. Just as he tried to figure it all out, a terrifying noise suddenly made him jump. The boy spun around to see what was making all the noise. An attack was already underway, so he had to protect himself. The blow was so strong it knocked him backward and sent him flying. This wasn't the kind of beast he had hoped to meet. It was Fenrir himself, the D-rank beast who had swept the forest clean of all other monsters. He was almost out of magic power and could only barely reach the weakest rank. It would be amazing if he could just get out right now. As soon as he looked into the creature's eyes, he knew his life would end right there. The boy had to stay wide awake or he'd end up as a dog's dinner. He was caught off guard and suddenly saw that the monster was faster than he thought. He had to dive out of the way just in time to escape the attack. He pulled out his spinning fire pistol and shot at the creature, but it dodged every single bullet. Now he was definitely in big trouble. Because his mana ran low, his bullets couldn't fly fast enough. The gun wouldn't work, so he had to think of another way to do it. He gripped his sword tightly and sprinted straight at the person trying to hurt him. That clawed paw of the beast was a scary threat. But the boy managed to slip away just as the deadly blow came down. And because of that, he spotted a chance to turn the situation to his advantage. He swung at the creature, but it slipped away just as fast. That was something truly impressive, and it completely caught him off guard. He had to change his plan because he was in real danger. If he were at his strongest, the forest dog would have been destroyed long ago. The wolf roared and lunged at him again, filled with rage. Bell knew he couldn't run that fast. Singh stood his ground to defend against the attack. So that's how he ended up getting hurt. He had been trapped, and now there was no way to dodge the endless stream of blows. Slowly, the creature crept closer, turning him into its next lunch. Knowing he had just been reborn, he refused to die so soon and had to pull up Achilles' shield. That way, he could guard himself while striking back. But the beast was so quick and strong that it suddenly attacked him from the side. The boy slipped and let go of his shield. The fight couldn't go on like this, or he'd be the aggressive dog's next meal. The weapons he had tried so far didn't work, and swinging the hammer wouldn't help either because the enemy's attacks were too slow to dodge. With no other option left, he had to grab the only weapon remaining and use it right away. The beast was ready to end him right there. The boy shut his eyes tight, his mind locking onto his goal. Right as the blow was coming down, he pulled his shield up to block it. But the beast had already struck, and to everyone's shock, nothing occurred because a gauntlet, wrapped in dark energy, was now in his hand. He didn't want to use it, but he knew it was better than dying for a second time. The creature was ready to strike again. Actually, it had gotten even quicker. But the fight had already ended. The boy had also gotten a lot quicker. Holding the hammer high, he stood over the creature. She couldn't keep up with him anymore, and the hammer was already raised, ready to crush skulls. A sharp, crushing hit knocked the beast, leaving it writhing in pain while its teeth scrambled and shifted inside its jaws. Aegis was a dark goblet that made its holder stronger. But that wasn't the only thing. Whoever touched it would start hearing a voice telling them to tear it down. The wolf was still alive, and now he was even angrier than before. As time went on, the user became tougher and hungrier for more lives. He waited eagerly for the creature to strike again, dodging every attack while the wolf struggled to keep up, and the boy had a blast. Finally, the wolf was gone from the world of the living. He felt a wave of relief now that it was finally over. That weapon couldn't be taken off in a fight, and as time passed, its dark power only grew stronger, pulling its owner deeper into the shadows. Now he had to figure out why a woman was hiding in that forest. As he thought, he spotted something strange with the hammer. It felt like it was buzzing with pure energy. Now that he had vanquished the beast, he could wield its power, and he knew that slaying such a mighty foe was far more rewarding than killing a weakling. He was already itching to try it. In the castle garden, his sister spent a quiet afternoon resting in the cool shade of a tree. Finally, the flower crown was finished. She hoped her brother would love the gift, but someone quickly grabbed the crown right out of her hands. The girl sneered that the flower crown was ugly, but she was right since it came from someone as dirty as herself. The poor girl's name was Jessica. She needed to know what Spencer thought about it. The strange-looking boy nodded at Jessica, knowing his only job was to do exactly what she said. As she tossed the flower crown into the air, it shattered instantly because Spencer had just slashed it with a whip. Sarah didn't like that, but she had no way to fight back. Jessica felt bored and had absolutely nothing to do. She grabbed her weapon and waved Sarah to join her. It was time for her to practice her aim by shooting at the cowering girl, but Belle stepped in to block the path and declared he'd play with Jessica instead. Sarah stood frozen in shock, completely unaware that anyone had arrived since she was so lost in her own world that she didn't even notice him step in. Belle mentioned that he was also looking for a reason to try out his powerful new weapons, but Jessica still didn't get what was going on. No one was going to stand in her path. Belle was too busy trying to cheer up his sister and promise her everything would be okay, leaving him to deal with the arrogant girl on his own. The boy with wild, messy hair tried to look scary by standing tall. Belle realized that this guy was just a servant to Jessica. He stood tall before the Duke's son, refusing to bow his head to a man born of a concubine. That just made the main character even more annoyed. Jessica couldn't help but wonder why he seemed so sure of himself when he was actually weak and only beat Zane because he got lucky. They thought the protagonist was just lucky and that Zane had been careless. Since he only fought with a sheath, he had to be the weakest of them all. He closed his eyes and told her she'd be better off seeing it for herself. Jessica didn't know if her success came from luck or skill, but suddenly she felt scared and quickly told Spencer to throw away the trash, a task he loved doing. Every time his whip cracked, the air turned to ice. But Belle still wasn't impressed. Spencer, a D-rank paladin wielding an ice whip, was far stronger than that little jerk who was only an E-rank. But the hero was still the hero. The boy promised to freeze his victim's legs first so he couldn't run away, then lock his arms and body until he was completely stuck, and finally slap his face until it looked like a stranger. Belle replied, "You talk too much," and in that moment, the extra person finally realized he was just a side character. Spencer gave him a stern warning not to make the mistake of underestimating him. Now he'd snap him into an ice pop and whip right toward Belle. But the boy slipped right out of the way. Jessica couldn't believe he had pulled it off. Even though he wasn't terrible, a D-rank paladin was still just a side character. The hero had trained hard his past life, but this was just a child's past self. Sarah was so impressed that her brother looked like he was dancing. Meanwhile, Spencer got so mad that he told his victim he'd show her he couldn't run away because Belle was coming to catch him. From now on, he stopped running away. Everyone there was stunned by his huge confidence. Belle decided to test whether that arrogant fool would actually do what he threatened. Spencer couldn't resist the bait and lunged forward to strike. Now he would turn him into a frozen statue. The whip snapped toward Belle, who stood there with his arms wide open. It struck him over and over again, yet nothing changed. Sarah grew so scared that the ice finally started to form. His arms and legs had turned stiff and cold, as if frozen in place. If he couldn't move, Spencer waited for the perfect moment to hit him in the face. Belle wondered if that was all he had left, and if so, it was finally her moment to strike. Spencer stopped in his tracks when he heard those words. Belle shouted out for Ragnarok right away. Suddenly, a light started at his belt, and a gun appeared in his hand. The arrogant fool refused to believe he could hold two divine weapons in his hands. Belle released his mana to break free from the ice. Then the gun roared and sent fire flying. Now he could move around again. Jessica couldn't believe what Belle had just done. It made no sense that he possessed two godly weapons and knew how to wield them so well. And now the moment had come to finally put an end to this proud, troublesome creature. He blasted Spencer with a fierce stream of fire. Spencer felt the chill of trouble closing in on him. He swung his ice whip around, wrapping himself in a layer of frozen protection to defend against the attack. She thought that would be enough to stop the fire from coming closer. Belle didn't think this would be hard at all. The fire kept creeping forward, and the bullet punched straight through that block of ice. Spencer stared in shock as the wall of destruction rushed toward him, ready to crush him. The bullet hit his chest with a massive thud. The hit didn't go all the way through him, but it still left him badly hurt. Jessica watched in shock as he crashed to the ground. The thick mud cracked the frozen ice and knocked out a powerful Y-rank paladin. Knowing she was just an E-rank fighter, she knew she stood no chance. He met her gaze and stared right back. He said the end had finally come. The girl called upon her God-given weapon. She begged him to stop coming closer, but she was so scared her hands shook so badly she couldn't even hold her weapon steady. She let out several shots that all went wide, yet she pleaded with him to stay back while her own legs refused to move. She tumbled down by herself, because fear was the only thing that filled that dark place. Belle stayed right there in front of her. Jessica's fear kept growing and growing. Standing before her was a man who could kill her with a single wish, and he firmly warned her never to bother Sarah again. The girl was frozen with fear and couldn't speak a word. She had no choice but to run while she still had a chance. Sarah sprinted to her brother with a heart full of thanks, eager to ask if the whip had hurt him, only for him to admit that Spencer was so weak it looked almost pitiful. Sarah told Belle how strong she was, but he just said he got strong so he could keep her safe. She handed him the new flower crown she made to replace the one that was destroyed. She set the item on Belle's hedge and said thank you for always standing by to keep her safe. Belle had a surprise from his sister. One day, he would make the entire nation respect this wonderful soul. The trouble was that since everyone looked down on the children of concubines, building his own reputation would be a hard fight, so he had to work extra hard to win people's respect. And for that reason, he had something urgent to accomplish right now. Outside the palace, the Duke stood holding his sword, lost in thought. He focused so hard you could almost see him concentrating. After a while, he slashed the air a few times. He cut right through the pile of fallen leaves. Only then did he realize that Belle had walked up to him. He asked the boy why he had come to him. Belle stepped forward to ask the Duke for his permission. Curious, the Duke asked what the boy wanted. Before he asked, he dropped his knees in front of the Duke. The Duke was so taken in by the fancy display that he couldn't help but admire it. Belle was so eager to take the admission exam for Kank that she couldn't wait any longer. The Duke looked at the boy with curiosity, clearly interested in what he asked for. Belle told the king he wanted to join his family and serve him as one of his own. To keep his family name respected, he had to do dangerous royal jobs like hunting monsters and leading missions, which was the quickest way to earn respect from his own kin. By taking on tough jobs, he would win everyone's respect. To unlock the best missions, he had to pass this test. As the Duke gazed at the boy, he suddenly understood that the young man had big dreams in his heart. But he made a point to say that the time wasn't quite right for him to take the test yet. He needs to become a true paladin before he even thinks about facing Kank. Right now, he was just a lowly F-rank warrior holding a divine weapon he had only just gotten. He needs to get his E-rank exam done first. To the Duke's surprise, the boy offered him a Finro Fong, and when Belle asked if it would change his mind, the Duke immediately recognized the powerful legendary weapon. Right away, he demanded to know how the boy had gotten hold of such a thing. Belle didn't even hesitate before handing him one of his godly weapons. The hammer hummed with a wild, buzzing energy that crackled all around it. Belle admitted it had been a bit tough, but in the end, he managed to tame that stubborn M. Seeing the raw power around the hammer, the Duke knew the boy could already use its special traits. He had beaten a D-rank beast, proving the boy was strong enough to join the C-rank exam. He agreed to let the boy take the test, but only if one thing was true. He couldn't even think about letting the Duchess down. Belle stood tall and said with a grateful smile that he would never leave. When he got to the test, he saw a bunch of other folks hanging out. C-rank stood like an unclimbable wall against many people. The little boy caught the eye of the other candidates. Most of them were grown-ups while he was still a kid. He walked over to the place where the exam registration was happening. The attendant asked if he was there with his dad, but she was shocked to find out he was coming to take the test all by himself. She told him to come back when he was grown up. The boy insisted on being taken seriously. After all, he was a paladin just like the rest. As they talked, a stranger stepped up to Belle and told him to quit acting like a hero, since little kids like him didn't belong there and needed to go right now. The main character didn't know what was wrong with this person, but he was certain there was a trouble brewing. The others knew exactly who that figure was. Lennox was a D-rank paladin who stood at the very peak of strength. They said that whenever he used his divine wind sword, his heavenly arm, it would automatically strike 8 times. He had a gift so amazing that people were already cheering for him. Lennox warned that if the kid wanted to take the exam, he better be at least as good as he was. Belle had no idea that this stranger was actually famous among his own group of friends. At the same time, this new side character couldn't believe the hero actually had a divine weapon. With the sheath at his waist, Belle pointed out that it was right there with him. The young man burst into laughter, believing it was impossible to fight with such a useless piece of cloth. As other side characters began to laugh, realizing how useless divine weapons really were, they breathed a sigh of relief that they weren't as pathetic as they had feared. Lennox said he didn't care if a foolish kid wanted to throw his life away. But it bothered him that taking the exam made them seem like equals. As he left, he warned that the little piece of trash should go back to his mother's lap. Once the annoying part was done, Belle ordered the secretary to put him on a list right away. She wondered if he was certain about this, but he stood firm. To do it, he had to be at least D rank and get a recommendation from a knight of B rank or better. With that recommendation letter, he'll be able to join in and fix everything. The girl knew it was pretty certain no one would ever suggest sending a kid. But as she read the letter, she found out it was written by the Duke of Catastro himself. Only then did she realize that the little boy standing before her was the Duke's own son. The crowd gathered in the arena, the very place where the test would happen. The instructor started explaining exactly how the exam would go. First, they would be whisked into the dungeon using the magic teleportation stone. They had 5 hours to come back with the shining jewel before it was too late. Altogether, only 3 of them were left inside the dungeon. Only those who could get their hands on the jewels got a promotion. The smug side character was sure he was bound to end up as a winner. The challenge ahead looked scary enough to make him shrink back, and seeing it made the hero feel bad for his own fears. Once he finished explaining, the instructor paused to see if everyone was ready. As the crowd cheered with excitement, the exam kicked right off. It was finally the hero's moment to step through the teleportation stone and into the dungeon. The room started to shine so bright that he was suddenly whisked away to a whole new world. It felt like stepping through a magic door, and suddenly he was standing right inside the dark cave. It felt like everyone had been scattered to different spots on the first floor, so he had to pick which path to follow. Even though the dungeon was huge, he still had plenty of time to finish it all. Since he had the chance to do his very best, he knew letting that opportunity slip by would be a total waste. Every monster he beat down in the dungeon gave him more magic power, and the more he fought, the stronger he became. Right away, he grabbed his sword and vowed to hunt every creature living there. Down in the dark dungeon, the other candidates were fighting hard to beat the monsters. They were terrifyingly strong and posed a real threat. The lizard's eyes were so scary and wild they could scare anyone weak right away. The arrogant side character couldn't figure out why everyone else was having such a hard time fighting such weak creatures. He could wipe them out with a huge smile because it didn't take any effort at all. His amazing victories made everyone admire him, so he kept slaying monsters until he bragged that he wasn't average like the rest. To be honest, he found the difficulty frustrating, but the side characters were happy to follow him because they knew they would stay safe. Alongside them, Lennox warned that they would get to see his skills in action, but that they were just weaklings meant for wandering around. After wandering through the dark dungeon for a while, the group finally found a huge door blocking their path. That has to be the last room. He hoped he could finally find something truly fun to do. Suddenly, the room was filled with dangerous D-rank monsters, and the glowing jewels waited for us on a high altar at the very back. One of the creatures started walking right toward the group. Lennox felt ready to slice the monster apart with his slashes, but the beast was so tough that not a single hit could hurt it. Now it was the creature's turn to strike back. For the first time in the dungeon, the arrogant side character finally felt the monster's pressure. The hit knocked him off his feet, yet he couldn't believe his own attacks had done absolutely nothing. Even the side characters couldn't believe what was going on. They froze in fear as the other creatures locked their eyes on them. The man from Clava had to move fast to stay alive. He managed to hit one of the monsters attacking him, only to realize that hitting it with his fists would never work. At the same time, the woman fought hard to stay on her feet as the flying creature swirled around her. This monster could strike with its feathers from far away, never having to get close. Lennox finally saw just how tough this last exam stage was. There stood a monster that could shrug off every power they wielded. He was utterly helpless against that stone monster. His heart pounded so hard he couldn't move, so he shut his eyes tight, bracing himself for the worst. The scary monster was smashed into pieces before it could even hit the candidate. He blinked his eyes open, his mind still reeling from the shock. Bell felt relieved because he had arrived just in time to stop the worst from happening. He enjoyed the hunt quite a bit, but Lennox spotted him right away. It was that tiny scrap of garbage taking the test. A beast that could not be hurt by any punch or sword was closing in on him. Bell had to switch up his plan to handle that beast. That sword was the perfect choice for the job at hand. Lennox couldn't believe how the boy's God-given gear had changed right before his eyes. Bell finally took down that one-hit monster. Now he had to deal with the one flying above him. He had all the perfect gear needed to fire off many shots at once. He shot the creature full of bullets until it became a flying sieve. The other characters couldn't believe the boy was so strong, especially since his magical sword was just an empty sheath. Lennox had no clue how he could be carrying so many powerful god's weapons. Not to mention, the boy had total command over each one. With time running out, he was forced to wipe out the monsters fast. Sitting on the sidelines, the arrogant side character couldn't believe a kid could be so good. Even as he stood frozen in shock, the hero kept on crushing the monsters. With everything taken care of, he just had to grab one of the jewels. He finally arrived at the altar where they were standing. A group of side characters stepped forward to shower him with praise, which made the main character feel really annoyed. They flipped on them just as fast, mocking the same person they had been worshipping seconds before. They used to laugh at him for being worse than the kid, but they were always wrong about him. That experience had torn apart Linax's confidence completely. The two side characters thought they could take the last two jewels. Bell reached for his hammer without uttering a single sound. He had already found the special gem he needed to feel good, and now he was ready to do something truly fun. He swung his fist hard and hit the altar. To the shock of the two arguing characters, they demanded to know what he had done, and he told them he had destroyed the last of the jewels. He showed them the last jewel and said that since they wanted it so much, they just had to come and take it. They were just useless sack-ins who lived off other people's talent. Those who loved to tear down anyone who was no longer useful to them. They didn't deserve the title of knight. Nothing could break their spirits quite like getting yelled at by a small kid. Bell slipped out of the room, leaving the side characters behind. Lennox took his scolding to heart, admitted his arrogance, thanked Bell for the lesson, and promised not to let it ruin him. The protagonist was stunned to realize his honesty and dreams would soon lead them to meet again. While outside, a boy cheered wildly because he had finally become a C-rank knight. Because he had hunted so many monsters, his mana had grown a lot. Now he just needed to earn his family's trust so he could truly keep his sister safe. Finally, he reached the Duke's house to tell him the news. But the Duke looked like he was right in the middle of a very important meeting. Knights were plotting to bring down the Meldia family. 3 B-rank paladins were heading toward the Duke's home, and his family had to stop them before they arrived. It looked like another noble family had gotten into trouble with those paladins. People whispered that these knights had cast forbidden spells on their weapons. The B-rank paladins finally realized why they had been called to this place. The Duke shouted that they couldn't let this bad luck keep happening and had to wipe them out right now. One knight glanced around and realized Jin wasn't there with them. The young man set the book down on the table and asked what the meeting was about. In a split second, everyone spun around to find out who it was. The young man announced that his new family would be wiped out by him, the future Duke, while a maid brought food to her mistress, saying the meal had finally arrived. Sarah readies herself to pull up a chair and sit at the table. She thanked the woman politely for her hard work, but the woman walked out of the room without even noticing the kindness. Sarah looks like her heart is breaking. She stares at her food with no spark of joy, but then her brother bursts in, shouting that he has finally made it. He gazes at her, his face lighting up with pure happiness. Sarah answers back just like that. She didn't know where he had gone and was very worried until Belle told her he was handling something important and left gifts for her. A full meal sits ready on the table. Sarah was thrilled about the apple pie that had arrived and couldn't wait to devour it all while sitting with her brother. But now isn't the moment to enjoy his sister's company. The food never changes because even the servants refuse to serve the children of concubines. He must work his hardest right now to make life better for his sister. The meeting with the Duke is still going on. He is amazed that one of his boys was able to beat Karma all by himself. This tells us Jin must have already climbed to the top level. Just as we expected from the Duke's oldest son, he is playing a completely different game. Then, he pulled up a chair and sat down at the table. He waits to see if his dad has anything more to add. He told us that the king had given their family a brand new mission. They were there to guard Princess Racheline along the way. She would travel through a city near the duchy, and they had to make sure her path was safe. One of the knights started to worry that the royal guards weren't enough. One person whispered that they mustn't tell the royal family, yet that Karma was finally gone. So, the safest way to go is through Ricada. Just as they were chatting, someone else walked in through the big doors. The boy asked them to hold on and not rush into a decision just yet. His look made every single person stop and stare. The knights realized they were looking at Belle. The Duke couldn't hide his pride in his son's amazing talent. It felt like the test was already done. The boy held up his certificate to prove he had officially become a level C member. It's amazing that he managed to do this while still so young. The Duke asked why they had stopped him right in the middle of their talk. He felt he had a better path to lead them down this road. One knight was shocked to find a boy with a suggestion to offer. Since there are no monsters on the path through Ricada, bandits take over and turn the 3-day journey into a dangerous adventure. It would be much safer if the journey went right through that giant monster's belly. One knight warned that the place was deadly, but the boy knew the monsters there. Most of them are dark, scary horrors that bring nightmares to life. Since both are night animals, it's much safer to travel when the sun is out. And best of all, you'd be at your destination in just one day. But the knight, with a heavy heart, had to agree. Once the boy spoke, the Duke saw that he was brave and knew all about monsters. Now everyone waited to see what they thought of it. Because the boy wanted to take on this big job, he knew he could safely guide the princess to her destination. His confident stand kept the Duke lost in thought. At last, Jin stepped up to speak his part in the conversation. A dark and dangerous feeling hung heavy in the air. He was curious about why this man was talking to them. The energy was so fierce that it dried out the plant on the table and scared the other knights. Bell had forgotten just how scary his older brother was. But even that didn't scare him. He showed off his powerful gifts and let it be known that he meant business. He promised that he would get the princess to her destination safely, no matter what happened. Jin, curious about the boy's confidence, asked if he could stop him. Belfirm told us that a knight always honors his promise. Jin commanded the boy to shut his mouth, for his words were a dangerous insult to her. This was Razor, the brother's secretary, who had to be a level B paladin by now. Jin looked at the boy with such strong interest that he told his secretary to put him to the test. Then he showed his powerful armor because he was ready to defeat that child. He was going to teach the concubine's son a lesson. Right away, he started walking toward the boy, who looked like he was paying close attention to everything around him, even though he didn't move at all. The secretary was ready to make the first move, but Belle saw that things were about to get much harder than she thought. Despite the odds, he defended himself so well that the secretary was left amazed. Jim looked happy with what he had seen. That move was quicker than anyone thought, but he's still too young to fight a level B paladin. The Duke stood his ground and declared that was enough, leaving Belle to take charge of the job. The secretary looked at the Duke and wondered if he really meant what he said. Since Karma was already gone thanks to Jin, this first mission would be quite a fun challenge to take on. Belle thanked him politely and promised that he would not let her down. Jin watches the boy carefully, but his evil grin hides a dark secret. Belle had to rush straight to the royal palace. It was his very first time stepping foot in that place. He marches straight for the gates to get inside, but the guards block his way and say he can't just walk right in. The boy showed them his paladin certificate and explained that he's the one responsible for protecting the princess. They can't quite believe that a child like this has already reached level C. Once he was correctly identified, the gates swung open for him to walk right through. The guards don't believe the kid can keep the princess safe, but the hero won't give up, and right on time, the carriage rolls up while she whispers that her new bodyguard is adorable. She said sorry and told him she didn't need his help after all. The man on the throne asked the princess if she has already left. His servant nods that she must already be on her way. Along with a few guards already with her, the Duke's son joins her escort. He learned that Belle is his son and that she is still just a little girl. Thinking he must be incredibly talented, he told his servant to be extra careful. She gave him permission to pull out his secret weapon whenever things got too tough. He flashed his sharp knives, but said they weren't needed since he's the kind of guy who takes people out while they're still asleep. The carriage keeps rolling down the road. Inside, the princess, the hero, and the guards are all there. That job looks easy, but matters a lot because finishing it is the only way to help his sister. But there's a hidden twist waiting to change everything. He feels right out of place, like nobody really wants him there. He stepped back, feeling a bit awkward about asking, just to find out why the princess said he wasn't needed anymore. She pauses to answer, explaining that she simply does not like depending on others. She wields her own powerful gift and is far from the weak figure people think she is. The boy realized she was even more arrogant than he had guessed. The princess keeps her eyes on the world beyond. Even with the city buzzing around it, everyone just keeps going about their business like nothing is wrong. That seemed to wake something up inside the princess. She throws open the door and gazes outside with wild excitement. The boy loves seeing her happy face, but the princess feels uncomfortable about it. He apologized, saying she reminds him of his sister, and he's sure she'd have reacted the same way if she'd seen all that. The princess wondered if they usually got along well, and Belle explained that they play together all the time since she is still so young, keeping things simple with games. The princess told us that while she has many brothers and sisters, she can't trust any of them. Belle pitied him, thinking it must be a fight over who would take the throne next. He admitted that in his own home, he faces a very similar struggle. His brothers and sisters often bully him because he is the son of a concubine, and since his mother is gone, nobody is left to protect him. The princess looked like she really wanted to know more about it. Ball told her that if she felt comfortable, he was ready to listen and share whatever she needed to say. She refuses to lean on anyone, especially not on a man like him. The boy thought he knew what was happening, which was rude, while they knew they were being watched from the street just beyond the walls. The night slowly settled over them. They made it to their goal in a single day, just like they had planned. But for the princess, all that hard work had left her completely drained. The gates swing open and welcome her inside. Only she has no idea who this young man really is. Peter, a knight from that kingdom, told them how thrilled they were to finally welcome her. Belle knew the name Peter, but couldn't place it right then, and both of them thought it very odd that they were being welcomed outside the city walls. The ambush was set with everyone outside, waiting for the princesses to move. The boy saw so many guards that he knew something was still very suspicious. A sharp knife flew through the air and landed right at their feet. Belle knew the princess would be sitting right out in the open, waiting to be found. He moved fast to use his magical armor and shield her from harm. She and her guards froze in surprise the moment they saw her. An enemy attack was happening, and the princess was the one they wanted. She felt the sting of several daggers flying her way. With so many around, things could get really messy. Peter was ready to make a move. Using his sword skills, he was able to keep the princess safe. He wouldn't let anything happen to her. Belle glanced at the knight's power and guessed he must be a level B hero. The killers had to run away because the surprise attack had failed. Peter commanded his knights to chase them in while the princess was led safely out of the castle. Belle stayed outside while the princess was led away. She glanced back, her heart pounding with fear. Once inside, they told her she was safe. But the princess said she could protect herself. Just as the knight promised to keep her safe, a sword slashed his throat. The princess didn't see the attack coming and was so scared she froze. It was Peter himself who did it. She realized the true danger was hiding right next to her. He stared at the guard who had just died. All his giving ended up with nothing to show for it. The princess had no idea what was about to happen next. Peter whispered that her life was about to end in a few moments. Even though the princess claimed she could fight back, she was totally helpless. The knight moved closer to her, one slow step at a time. She was so scared she couldn't even bring herself to use her divine weapon. Peter showed his true, rotten self with a smile that looked like a monster's. Now the princess needed a hero to come save her. The glass in a room window had all been smashed. Peter couldn't believe what he had just seen. One of his men was gone, killed by the boy who was supposed to be guarding him. The princess didn't expect the boy to be the one to step up. He mumbled an apology for keeping everyone waiting. The boy finally slid down from the window. He looked at the princess and told her that from now on, it was his job to take care of things. Peter figured the guards would be tricked into coming outside if he played his cards right. He didn't think the boy could beat him, and in the end, the hero remembered who he was while Peter felt completely lost. His true name was Von Wiggle. The knight was stunned to learn the child knew his secret past life and destiny. So even though Peter felt scared, he admitted it was a strange situation. Even if the child had investigated him, the boy would still never be able to defeat a level B paladin. And indeed, he might find it impossible to overcome. But if the fight was against Peter, he'd have no trouble at all. Fuming at the hero's boldness, he vowed that the hero would soon regret those words. The boy knew Peter would throw his daggers first, and that is exactly what Peter did. The boy slipped past every attack with ease since he knew his foe would strike suddenly with a diagonal cut from his right hand. Peter stood frozen in shock, realizing he had completely missed every single blow he threw. Since the protagonist knew he'd try to sneak up on him from behind, his hand was ready to call upon his powerful weapon. With his sword, he blocked the surprise attack because he already knew those moves. Peter couldn't fathom how that tiny bit of human waste could keep up with his speed. Belle warned that he could end him any second, so if he wanted to live, he'd best give up right now. But as his opponent's rage boiled over, Felon realized he'd made a huge mistake and warned that he'd tear the kid apart piece by piece. His rage made his strikes easy to read, which was his only flaw. His rage drove him to strike again and again, but he never made it to the child. The princess was amazed to see him, a tiny guy, fight an assassin like it was nothing at all. He stopped everything he was doing. The princess finally saw that she had been talking far too much. The ring on her finger started to glow, and the hero, no longer patient, declared he would end this once and for all. His first strike landed hard and did real damage to his opponent. Peter was hurt, so he had to change how he planned his attack. He saw that every move he made was being watched, just as his boss had warned. That boy could be either incredibly talented or something about him is special, so you better not get careless. With a smile, he pulled out his biggest secret weapon to face the trouble. The protagonist knew this would happen, so he'd raise his impenetrable shield of light and tell himself that he could handle whatever came next. Peter thought the boy was just being a big show-off, so he reached out and started to unscrew the tiny vial. Even with a hint of what lay ahead, the protagonist felt a knot of worry tighten in his chest. Those were the Dragon King's own tears. He tossed them to the ground, and for a short while, he felt like he was drinking a rare potion that gave him a huge burst of magic power. Peter promised that if the child wasn't careful, they would soon wish they had been. He threw his daggers, but this time everything changed. The blades around him had grown far stronger, forcing the boy to move with extreme caution. They froze in midair, forming a perfect circle around him. Peter was certain he would finally win because the boy was stuck inside a wall of glowing light. Magnets pulled his body up and into the air. The princess began to fret deeply about her bodyguard. He had to slam his shield against the ground to break free. He used the shield's power to try and smash the barrier apart. But the weapon he created from the wind wasn't strong enough. Peter wasn't finished showing off what he could do. His daggers started to shine even brighter, buzzing with a crackling electric light. Power surged through the whole wall. Inside, the boy twisted and screamed in pain. Peter promised to get this stage done fast. The boy was about to pass out, and he knew he couldn't let that happen. As he grew too weak to fight back, sharp arrows started flying through the air. They pointed the daggers right at them. This blow shattered the barrier into pieces. Only then did Peter finally understand what was going on. The princess had finally figured out how to call upon her special powers. That brave knight was putting his own life on the line to save her, and she knew she couldn't stay scared forever. Her trying to help just made Peter furious. He threw himself at his victim to make sure the job was done. And now the princess was overcome with fear, which was all the help the protagonist needed, finally making the assassin realize he was in serious trouble. He got hit with a hard, powerful punch. That was all it took to leave him unable to move. Bell came out victorious in that fight. His opponent fell flat on the ground and wouldn't move at all. After he got back on his feet, he looked over to see if the princess was hurt. Her eyes held a quiet sadness, and she said nothing. Then she walked right up to the boy. She gently touched his face and whispered that he was the only one hurt in the room. She apologized and explained that he had been forced into the family feud against his will. The boy told her it was no trouble at all, proving the princess was just as tough as she said, though she quickly admitted she wasn't quite as strong as her bodyguard. She thanked him warmly and promised that she would always be there to defend him if he ever needed it. Kneeling down, the boy bowed his head to thank the princess for helping him. She stared at him with such respect that it was clear she truly admired him. She slipped the ring off her finger and asked him to keep it, a small gift of thanks and friendship that Belle knew exactly what to make of. That wasn't just any ordinary ring. At last, the mission was done with not a single soul lost. The Duke welcomed him with open arms. He heard every single thing that had happened while the princess was being led away. Belle told the Duke he'd finished the job, but the Duke saw there was more to it than that. On one of the boy's fingers sat the Ring of Solomon. The princess had given it to him to show she trusted him. It was one of the royal family's valuable treasures that held mana, and everyone couldn't believe the boy had managed to get it. He could turn out to be even more amazing than the Duke ever dreamed. Seeing this, he couldn't keep his happy smile hidden. He told the boy he would take him to Athens right away. He was stunned to get this news, since that elite paladin academy only accepted kids from noble families. Most of his family learned from private teachers instead of going to school. Tradition said only those chosen to take over the family were allowed to go to the academy. This could only mean he was now running to become the one in charge. The Duke told him to keep training until he heard news about his classes starting. The boy still had words to share, and his father leaned in to hear them. Standing right in front of him, he stayed strong because he had something important to ask. The doors swung open, and he stepped out into the hallway, already beside his beaming sister. She stares around in shock, unable to believe that this messy, unfamiliar space has finally become her new room. Now her bed feels so much cozier than before. The Duke himself said yes to letting them move into the big house, hoping it would help them earn respect from everyone. Her happiness is impossible to hide. She notices something strange about the boy's hand. A tiny cut marred its surface. He told us he hurt himself while on his last mission. She felt a bit worried knowing that, but soon they were playing again. That made him feel even happier. From this moment forward, Sarah was promised a life of comfort and safety. Now he must look ahead, for a disaster is waiting to strike in just 5 years. His sister might be in trouble again, so he must hurry to find out who did it. And to do this, he has to become the pride of his family. Jin's servant slips into his room to share some news. While HBA waits for permission, Jin keeps his eyes locked on his painting, lost in deep focus. The servant said the brother, who wasn't born to our family, would be sent to Athena Academy. He was the first to do so since Jin himself, so they should kill him right away. But Jin didn't care about that at all. He set his painting down for just a second. He said his brother wasn't a danger just yet. His brother growing up would also be a big help. It was something he genuinely loved. His servant was taken aback by what he saw. Jin showed his true rotten side by loving to smash things right after they finally grew up. Even though his master had already given the order, he thought it was too risky to do it exactly as he wished. The boy, armed with many godly weapons, had already taken down a powerful level B paladin. He had to strike right now, just to stay safe. Bell was training outside, so he could sharpen his special powers before he joined the academy. The trouble was that he'd have to hunt up 1,000,000 monsters to make it happen. Looking into his sword's blade, he noticed his brother's servant coming closer. He had to stay sharp for the way it was coming at him. The man stepped closer and spoke with polite respect, which surprised him since he thought the man was an enemy. Realizing he was his brother's servant, he asked what he wanted there. He was saying sorry for what happened just the other day, because it was rude to point his sharp sword at one of the Duke's sons. Thinking he might be good, he told his friend not to worry about the past. He gave the boy a thank you for being so kind. He said he had something else to talk about with him. The boy still gripped his sword as the servant asked if he wanted to join him on a mission to hunt down monsters. He was given an odd job, and he told me that his master Jin and the other paladins were busy plotting something different. He was so amazed by the boy's performance that he wanted to help him. This was a very strange invitation that he couldn't refuse as the Duke's son, but he knew he had to be careful. He agreed to take on the job, and the man was grateful, not knowing that accepting the invitation meant he was walking straight into a trap to be killed. The hero leaned in and asked, "Where are we headed next?" It was a lonely spot named Ika, and he knew exactly what kind of place it was. He might have forgotten all about it, but it was the perfect spot to use a special trick to boost his mana. Ambrosia was a rare treat that gave your magic power a permanent boost. The carriage rolled toward the place where they would hunt down the monster. The hero stood inside, ready to fight the monsters and dreaming of tasting the sweet ambrosia. But getting it was going to be really hard. To do that, he had to sneak into a secret dungeon, and luckily, he knew where one was hiding. It seems like it will show up near the city of Etha. With night already falling, they had to find a place to stay. The man would hand over the important things he needed to say. They had to wipe out some giant leviathans. They were told that some sea monsters lived right there in that spot. Since it was already late, they decided to rest so they could start fresh at dawn the next day. The boy told us he was heading up to his room. As he made his way up the stairs, someone was keeping a close eye on him. The man felt like a fool who had no clue what was going on. He'd make everything look like a surprise accident. Even though he had great skills, he was only level C, so it would be easy to defeat him. Once inside his room, he figured Razor must already be fast asleep. He blew wine through the window to make his shield fly like a platform, letting him reach the secret dungeon hidden deep inside the monster forest. He and his master discovered it ages ago, but its exact hiding spot remains a secret to everyone else. At last, the boy's feet finally press against the ground. When the strange object vanishes, he realizes he has finally found the dungeon. Ahead of him, a tiny doorway waits to be opened. The boy stepped inside and found a huge door, just what he had been hoping to see. You can tell a hidden dungeon is level just by its blue color. A green gate stands at level B, and once you pass through, you'll get a special reward called Ambrosia that matches the dungeon's level, which will surely help him a lot, so the boy is ready to walk right into the gate. He has to beat the big monster guarding the dungeon. In his past life, he stood alone at level D when it happened, and though his master warned him it was too soon and might still be hard, he refuses to back down just because he's scared. He slipped his hand through the gate. As he moved through, he thought he needed to get strong fast. Deep inside the dark dungeon, he was fighting the first monster, but it wasn't even a challenge. He watched the Phantom Knight shift, ready to charge and strike again. It landed fast and accurate hits, yet the boy kept blocking and slipped right through to find a gap in the assault. The knight's wall stood wide open with no one watching, but his punch still couldn't knock it out. Instead, the blow knocked the boy backward. He had to swap his weapon, and now he swung a huge hammer. Holding the object, he got off one more hit. Still, the monster stood there untouched. Hitting that armor with punches just wasn't strong enough to break it. It felt to him to try a new way. With his sword raised again, he made the light flare up. He was ready to unleash his magic to strike. The blows slammed right into the armor. Even then, they didn't manage to do any real harm. He had never seen such a beast before, yet he knew his own power was still only at level C. Once more, the Phantom Knight's fierce attacks pressed hard against him. He was in trouble and had to come up with a new plan right away. If a creature wore a shield, it surely had to have a weak spot somewhere, and the boy looked like he finally cracked the code. A bullet filled with magical energy would easily handle the task. Now he was even spitting out fire. He started winding up to shoot, but the Phantom Knight kept marching right at him. There were just 2 seconds left before it would be ready. The monster crept nearer and nearer until it was close enough to hurt him. At last, when they were close enough, his attack was ready to strike. The bullet struck the armor and worked just as well as anyone could have hoped. That hit was so strong, it could smash right through the armor. The creature hit the ground because it had finally been brought down. The boy fell back as well, knocked down by the kick of the gun. Now that the fight was done, he let out a long breath and finally felt safe. The beast's only flaw was a magical strike, so all it took was to hit hard enough. Without that divine weapon, he would have been in deep trouble, proving that the dungeon boss must be terrifying. But that was just what you'd expect from a secret dungeon. Even though it was risky, getting those rare items from the monsters was a huge chance for him, since one of those potions could bring his stamina and mana back. The boy gulped it down right away because he needed every bit of strength to keep going. And so he did, smashing every creature in his way until he reached his destination. Behind that huge gate lies the mightiest beast of all. He couldn't tell if his next encounter would be with a demon or a giant snake, but he was about to find out. At last, he stepped into the big hall. It looked like a big arena. The boy began to hear strange noises. Suddenly, a shadowy figure looking like a knight stepped right in front of him. His body began to shake, and his mouth turned dry. The pressure was so heavy it crushed him, and the beast staring back was truly deadly. His eyes burned with a blazing red light. The knight crept closer, knowing he was about to face the dungeon's toughest monster. He stood ready to fight the scary monster. The boy had to keep his eyes wide open and never let his guard down. The phantom knight stared at his sword and swung it quickly, signaling that the attack was starting. The boy had to move fast or his fight would end in a flash. The mess that came after was just too much to take. Belle slipped backward to create some space, yet she still had to twist her body to avoid his heavy hits. If he ever got hit by any of those attacks, it would kill him. Once more, the beast spun to face him, making the boy jump away in fear. That was the moment he finally drew his sword. Now, he had the power to strike back too. He found a gap and hit the ghostly knight from behind, only to discover its armor was far tougher than he thought. Once more, he found himself struggling to punch through that hard steel. The boy couldn't stop to think. He had to focus only on dodging. He chose to give it another go, just like he had before when it worked so well. He used his fire spitter, which was the best plan he had. This time, he was going to push forward in his charge for a much longer time. It was all over in just 5 seconds. He still needed a little more time to get his attack ready. And the moment it was ready, he launched the Phantom Knight, hoping that was all it took to win. The strike slammed into the beast without a second to block it. He was totally shocked because it did absolutely nothing. He saw a weird mark on the Phantom Knight's chest. The magic resistance was so strong it felt like a real wall. Just like before, the boy was trapped with nowhere left to go. He was lucky his quick moves kept him out of trouble. Realizing he needed better protection, he grabbed his shield to help him fight. With it, he was able to stop a straight-on strike from hitting him. But that power was so deadly it had to be stopped. His hands shook as he realized something terrible had happened. The Phantom Knight was shifting how it fought. This time, something came down from the sky. Belle had to move faster than ever before to land the final, deadly strike. The Black Knight's sword hit the ground so hard it broke the arena floor apart. As the dust swirled higher, the boy vanished from view completely. He appeared once more and pulled even farther away. He ran out of mana and couldn't break through the armor. Then the dust hit his foe until a faint glow finally appeared. His body felt a bad omen. A sword flew from the creature and hit him. He raised a shield just in time to save himself from being cut down. The blade bounced far off, and the boy knew the attacks weren't done yet. That strike was just a trick, but the real danger was waiting right behind them. He had no choice but to give up. His body twisted in pain from the brutal hit. It lay on the ground in front of the monster, but it wasn't done with its enemy's life yet. She tried to stomp him to end his pain. Even though he was weak, Belle still managed to duck out of the way one more time. He was only able to regain his strength after drinking a magical potion. If he hadn't had that one thing left, he would have lost everything, especially since the monster had already grabbed its sword back. With no chance to win and danger closing in, he had to take a huge risk. That big shield was the heaviest thing he owned. That thought sparked a clever plan inside his head. He pictured himself throwing it at just the right speed by using his wind magic. At last, the shield had turned into a weapon meant to strike. He just found the most powerful shot he owned. His plans fell apart when the Phantom Knight sidestepped, catching him completely off guard with no weapon to defend himself. There was nothing left to stop that sharp blade from cutting through. With nowhere left to run, he knew he couldn't escape. And now he stood with no shield to guard him. He had to steer his path right, or he'd never live to see another day. To the creature's shock, the shield knocked it aside just long enough for him to slip past its swinging sword. The boy saw his chance and rushed forward. This time, he decided to try a new kind of attack. He swung his hammer with all his might, hoping to smash something. The Phantom Knight knew he couldn't dodge the attack. The crash hit so hard it was absolutely ruined. And the creature dropped to the floor, beaten and done. Belle was out of breath after that fierce fight. He'd gambled everything on his risky shield play, and it had paid off big. Now, he had to find something inside that armor and stab it. But the boy had taken too much time to do it. The knight stood up again. The fight wasn't done, because suddenly the armor started falling off, showing the boy a scary new shape he didn't understand. The monster reached out to grab the latch on the guard of its sword. He pulled out what looked like a new weapon, a strange lock, while his sword remained safely sheathed. The truth was finally out. The boy never thought such a thing could be real, but now he had a new enemy to fight. The beast was now tearing forward with frightening speed. Belle fought hard to stay on her feet as the other character kept throwing her violently against the wall. A sharp, crushing pain suddenly shot through his whole body, making it hard to breathe. As soon as he hit the ground, he was too weak to keep fighting, and the creature kept closing the distance between them. His senses were nearly gone as the dungeon boss readied itself to end his life. The boy, weak and trembling, forced himself up again because he knew that without moving, he would die right there. His head was so heavy he could hardly hold it up. The slash flew straight at him, but he slipped it away just in time by swinging his gauntlet. The creature had finally had enough of its bad luck. The monster couldn't figure it out because its victim had no strength left. At the same time, the boy reached for his sword and called it to his hand. For the very first time in this fight, he finally managed to push his opponent back. And now the real fight was about to begin. They started trading hit after hit. Now both fighters were zooming around the whole arena, making the battle feel endless. The monster had grown far more powerful the moment it took off its armor. But even with the gauntlet's power, he still couldn't outmatch the protagonist. He was sure he could settle this fight, and sure enough, the mark on the monster's skin shifted from its usual color to a glowing, angry red. The hero's blade sliced right through the monster's ghostly trick. He instantly saw his sword had sliced empty air, leaving him to scramble for a defense against a strike he barely saw coming. As the creature's color shifted and it sped up, the protagonist found themselves pressured once more. But he wasn't beaten yet and needed more strength to win. As more power surged through his veins, the danger grew with every passing second. That sudden burst of power felt like a drug that made him want more. A twisted shadow took shape in his mind, revealing that the gauntlet was a curse. To gain its power, he had to give up his own soul. The hero was on the verge of making that pact. A strange glow wrapped around him, and soon he lost all control. He couldn't hold back from that huge power. It felt like he was slowly disappearing right before our eyes. The being told him he absolutely needed power right now. His own weakness was the reason he suffered and stayed oppressed. Because he was so weak, he eventually lost his life. By now, he must be totally drained from how weak he feels. It was time for him to grab whatever he wanted by using his strength. Slowly, he slipped further out of his own mind. The beast spotted a chance to put him to death. But his rival had already tapped into his own power and now stood on equal footing with that creature. The blast from their swords hitting each other was so powerful it felt like a disaster. There was only one thing pushing him forward now. He was always looking for a way to break everything. He stopped chasing victory and instead just wanted to tear everything down. And that strange beast would be the very first thing he had to fight. And then he would tear down anything that got his path. Just as he was about to lose control, the boy thought of his sister, who gave him a little spark of sense. Belle kept fighting the strong beast. He knew he couldn't pay that price right now because his beloved sister was waiting for him. He never fought just to kill people. He wanted to get stronger because he needed to keep his sister safe. This way, he finally pulled himself back together. Finally, it was time for the creature to let go of the power it held. The Aegis held a power so mighty it was truly formidable. He shoved the dungeon boss backward without any trouble. The entity tried to tempt him by promising its power if he just asked, but demanded his soul as payment. And even though the boy felt torn inside and hesitated, he chose to attack anyway while the creature moved closer. Both got ready to hit hard, but found themselves locked in a fast-paced fight instead. The beast tried to catch him off guard with a blast of magic, but he was faster than it could ever be. The boy knocked the creature's arm loose, leaving it too hurt to keep fighting. So he took his chance and cut the monster in half. Finally, it looked like they had completely tamed the monster. Belle came out on top of that fight, still feeling the power coursing through him. He watched as the lifeless creature slowly fell apart before his eyes. The challenge was finally over, and he could finally throw away the cursed gauntlet. The enemy was way too strong, and the boy was barely holding onto his own self. He had to stay away from that gauntlet as often as he could. Right in front of him, a tiny glass bottle had suddenly popped into existence. That was the item he had been searching for, ambrosia. If he drank that vial's liquid, he'd gain as much mana as a level B paladin and be able to use his divine armor powers. He realized he'd never seen a vial of ambrosia before, and that worried him a little. But he knew that if he wanted a brighter tomorrow, he had to take that bitter drink. At first, he didn't feel anything different. Soon, he felt his mana growing stronger by the moment. It was amazing that he jumped straight to level B. The power turned into pain so fierce the boy almost couldn't resist it. His chest ached while his body felt like it was on fire. The sheath at his waist suddenly blazed with bright light. Confused and out of it, he crumpled to the floor and lost consciousness. Now he lay right in the middle of that glowing magic circle. She woke up with a start, her heart still racing from the scare. He had no clue where he was. It felt like he'd been ripped out of reality and dropped into a whole new world. A man greeted him as he finally opened his eyes. That was his mentor, and it had been a long time since they last saw each other. Even with his face covered by a hood, the boy knew him instantly. It was clear as day that this was the one who gave his orders. There were others out there too, sharing the same space. A girl held a hammer, while a hidden man carried a gauntlet and a knight swung a sword. When he arrived there, everyone gave him a warm welcome. This was the very first time he'd ever heard of such a thing. That was the world where souls lived. When the man saw his student again, he felt so overcome with emotion. The boy felt a big smile grow on his face because his friends were finally back. Reg was his master, the one who gave him Avalon. He was the first one to carry the sacred shield of Aquila. Seeing his master show up out of nowhere made him feel really happy. But he couldn't make sense of how he remembered him after coming back to the present. The master admitted he had been watching his pupil from afar, seeing him die and come back to life again. When he heard this, the boy's curiosity about that place grew. Deep inside Avalon, there was a special place that held all the legendary weapons and the spirits of every hero who followed them. The boy stood there, completely confused by what he had just heard. He needed to find where his old master's body was hidden. He answered that his body was likely still in the mountains, while Avalon, a divine weapon that bonded with its owner's soul to survive the passing of time, had lost its bearer, yet his mind stayed connected to his physical form. The boy instantly thought his weapon was the reason he had jumped back in time. But the master was unsure, and, at the very least, he didn't know his weapons could do that. But the boy was shocked to find that even his master couldn't give him the answer he wanted. When he met his master again, the master told him he did a great job keeping his sister safe. He gave him a pat on the back to say well done. But the boy felt shy when praised and wondered why he was even there. The master was just about to start telling his story, but one of the souls began to stir. He said they were moving too slow and that he needed to have a chat. His name was Raven, the man who could spit fire. The master warned that he still had more words left to share with his student. The man asked him to loosen up, reminding him that he wasn't made of stone. The boy just stood there watching, knowing nothing at all. He gave his name to the sixth successor and said it was a joy to meet him. The boy paused in thought, but when he reached out to shake the man's hand, he suddenly realized he'd been the one playing a trick. That man was so chill that the boy couldn't quite figure out. Despite being confused, Revan found the whole thing pretty funny. He told them the sixth successor was really naive, and the girl stepped in to join them. Charlotte could see the newcomer was still getting used to everything. The man claimed it was just a harmless joke and asked Haru if she agreed, though he was terribly shy about it. Though he was the fourth in line, he told him not to talk to him. The girl knew Revan loved to poke fun at people. He begged her to stop getting so angry, claiming it made her look ugly and added wrinkles to her face. Charlotte wasn't happy about that comment at all. The master tried to tell them to stop fighting, but she simply didn't like the way Reyes stood up for his point. Before she could even reply, she was already dealing with the comedian's crazy antics. The boy found it odd to see his master so carefree in such a strange spot. It proved just how strong his ancestors really were. He had already gone to his master to ask about them. They were all amazing heroes who stood up to fight the bad guys. The man holding his sword demanded they stop talking and get to the point. The very first successor, Adam, showed that the meeting was meant to happen. They had called the boy to that other place just to give him a warning. When he found out about it, he couldn't help but ask what it was all about. The sixth successor had to figure out how to use his divine arms. The news caught him off guard. Once you've perfected the divine arms, they begin to glow with a powerful burst of magical energy. If he opened them right now, he could die. That's the reason his heart hurt so badly. He must wait until his body grows strong enough to unlock this power. But the boy needs help right now. He thinks he can't stop his journey now. He needs all this power to keep his sister safe. Adam saw the boy was set in his ways, so he knew there was only one move left to make. He made up his mind to smash the boy right in front of everyone. He never thought Adam could move that quickly. He has to block that blow right now. That's when he finally notices that Adam is standing right behind him. The sword hit the boy hard in the back. Adam thought his move would show he's still too young, but he forgot that he could have been stopped. So he had to throw his old plans away and start over. After his final fights, the boy has grown into a much stronger fighter. Maybe he has what it takes after all. First, he must learn to wield the sword. Everyone is waiting to see if the boy has finally been accepted by his predecessor. Adam said yes, believing that if he holds onto just one power, he might finally be able to master it. The boy was allowed to wake up the hidden power inside his sword and shield. When the right moment arrives, he will unlock new powers alongside the truly extraordinary level abilities. The boy promised to unlock them right away. Adam liked the little one's confidence, and the comedian hoped that number 6 would get lucky. Everyone, even the quiet guy, hopes the hero can keep his little sister safe. They will keep watching him from the dark corners, never letting their eyes leave him. It was time for the boy to wake up inside his own body again. He opened his eyes to find himself waking up deep inside a dark dungeon. He feels no pain in his body, yet something strange is happening to him. Thinking about the sword's awesome power, he can't wait to use it to crush those monsters, knowing exactly what special trick it has. They had to jump into a boat to get to where the monsters lived. Now they're right in the middle of their planned trip. The young man said the giant sea monsters would be showing up any day now. So it's time to get ready to fight. He has no idea that everyone there is plotting to attack him. Even the barber has his hands in this mess. The boy began to notice that something about the task felt strange. Why would a B-level knight be sent to wipe out weak sea creatures, or why would he need backup for such an easy job? The hero is sure someone planned this, so he knows a sudden attack will be trouble. That is exactly why he must keep his eyes glued to him without ever taking his gaze away. He was told they were getting closer, but the place itself stayed quiet and still. As he gazed at the young man, he noticed the boy had pulled his knife free. The hero gripped the oil tightly. He slashed his arm to draw the creatures near, giving himself a warning sign to act. He offered his own blood as bait, which was more than enough to drive the creatures into a wild frenzy. Just as he spoke, the first beast burst into view, only to be joined quickly by a swarm of others. There were far more of them than anyone had hoped for. Since they lived at sea level, the main character told them to split up and watch the boat, but he refused to leave the boy alone. Something felt very off, so he demanded to know why he had done that. Then, showing his cruel heart, he said the boy would never leave that place alive. He charged at the protagonist, whose leg was already bound by a whip, and instantly saw he was in a bad spot. The man who had tied him up was one of the local boatmen. Then he took off his hood to show who he really was. He gripped the whip tight, refusing to let go. That was Spencer, the person the main character knew all too well. The other young man pushed him to right then, and they're do exactly what they planned. Using all his strength, he pinned the hero to the ground with one of his legs frozen, which was definitely not a good feeling. Frigg was tossed out into the water. Spencer was still in the middle of his attack. He pushed his power to make the ice grow even bigger. That way, the boy would find it nearly impossible to get back to the boat. The ice defied the rules of nature and started to sink. They think this will cause the creatures to swallow him whole. Now they know the boy is dead from the fight, so the monsters will make sure he never runs away. The boy must catch his breath right now. To get back up to the surface, he decided to use his shield. It can make its own wind to stop the ice from sinking, but the ice sinking itself is still impossible. He started using magic to bring some air into the room. By pressing his face into the shields inside, he finally managed to catch his breath again. He wasn't expecting those two to team up and turn on him, staying sharp with Razor, but clueless that a third person was hiding in the shadows too. Most of the ground around his boat is frozen, but that's not even his biggest trouble. Down there live dangerous creatures that can kill you if you aren't careful. The most important thing right now is to fix his leg. With the shield in hand, he could smash right through all that ice. He finally broke free, but his ankle was hurt. That pain had to be caused the moment the whip touched his skin. The creatures saw that he was bleeding. He didn't waste a second. He drew his sword instantly. He isn't outnumbers them, but this battle will make him a better fighter. This is his first big test since coming back to life, and finally he can use his new power. He aims his first shot at one of the creatures. The sword burns with a fierce, blinding light. A beam of energy shot at the beast, while other swords of light formed in the water to end the fighting, allowing him to finally feel the thrill of the hunt again after so long with the Starblade formation. Several creatures are coming his way, but the blades of light are strong enough to stop your enemies in their tracks. They're charging directly at the monsters. This is the real magic that only the Caliban's sword can do. It calls forth a handful of glowing, flying blades that are just as sharp as the original sword. Before long, every last one of those creatures will be wiped out. But even on top, life isn't easy at all. They must crush those monsters into nothingness while standing on the frozen ground for support. 5 minutes have passed since everything went down. They're sure the boy has already left this world and gone on. Spencer stared in awe at Razor's sharp mind, knowing that plan was nothing short of brilliant. Besides that, he crushes every creature with ease, and Razor says he's playing a game on a totally different level. The boy is relieved to stay on his side, for if he doesn't, he might die like the creatures, yet he still thinks he can be of use. He didn't notice until the ice under his feet began to split apart. As the cracks widened, He rushed over to see what was wrong, but before he could find out, he was suddenly attacked. The other young guy was totally blown away by that. Something went wrong beneath the surface, and a big hole suddenly opened up in the middle of the ice. That was truly a disaster since a huge monster showed up ready to eat them all. A tentacle of the creature broke the water surface. He has to move fast before it catches him. That creature sits at B level, a foe that needs a whole team of paladins at the same rank to bring it down. If he isn't careful, he could lose his life. Just when things couldn't get worse, the monster launched a barrage of projectiles, but the knight leapt aside and dodged them all. Now he has to face the huge, writhing tentacles coming his way. The young man knows that if they catch him, he will die. He needs to solve the problem fast, because the quicker he does it, the more chance he has to live. His special power lets him fill his weapons with magic, so when he strikes, that energy flies right out with him. Because it works so simply, his energy blasts hit with incredible force. He believes he can crush the beast with just one strike. But the beast was wiser than he thought. After a long wait, the knight landed his strongest blow right onto the scary monster. But that wasn't the result he expected, because the creature had used another monster's body to block the attack. That just twists the knot even tighter for him. His enemy is so furious that his life is now in real danger. He climbed back onto the boat to find safety. With the ice now gone, he has no way to climb up and reach the creature. Now he has to worry about other monsters in the water leaping onto the boat, desperate to wipe out every human they find. He was so focused on everything else that he didn't see the tentacle coming until it hit his face hard. The weapons he carried weren't built for fighting more than one enemy at a time. And on top of that, he has no way to use the surroundings to his benefit, because once he leaves the boat, he's done for. He peeks out the window as the monsters start to gather. Every second that ticks by makes staying there more dangerous. But even cooler than the scary monsters is the moment the hero suddenly jumps out of the water. The boy should have died a long time ago, but Yaki showed up, flew right over his shield, and took down even more monsters. The protagonist realized the deceiver was in a tricky spot and just wanted to know how the boy had managed to survive. Even though he was tricked, he is still ready to step up and help them out. But Razor doesn't think the boy is strong enough to help him. He's up against a powerful B-level monster that he simply cannot beat. But the boy has a surprise to share. As he moves closer and the number of tentacles grows, the protagonist isn't caught off guard because he still has Caliban's powers to use. The blades manage to cut every single tentacle. Razor stares in shock, realizing he has finally mastered his weapon's special power. Those skills would be a real challenge to learn. Bell warned that he would carve up that monster and toss it to the fish. The monster readied itself to fire more water blasts at the boy, who didn't panic for a second, knowing that one big hit could sink their boat. Bell gets ready to show the creature what's coming by reshaping her light blades back into her original one. Those mini swords merge together to become a lightsaber that could shoot a focused beam of energy. The monster's strike hits the boy's defense, yet the boy's fierce will to win is stronger than ever. His strike tore right through the monster's body like a hot knife through butter. He kept moving right past it just as the blade cut through. At last, the beast was finally brought under control. After that strike, he was totally done for, his body ripped clean in half. Nobody could have ever thought the boy could pull off something so amazing. He stepped back onto the boat and declared that Spencer would be next, since he had to pay for what he did before. His servant knew that this boy was going to be a big trouble for Jin. Even after showing off his power, he still wants to kill the boy right now, warning that a bastard will never be able to beat a B-level paladin. As the boy draws near, he's shocked to see that this paladin still believes they can win. By using Spencer for a surprise attack, he knows it will really scare him. The two knights stared each other down for a heartbeat before both charged forward. Finally, their weapons smashed together in a loud clash. At first, the boy doesn't feel the pressure until Razor suddenly proves he is much stronger and shoves the boy backward. Of all of them, one stands out with strength that beats the rest. He thinks this will settle the battle. But the hero was already so skilled with his sword that a flying blade shot straight at him, and knowing what those blades could do, he panicked instantly. With just a single blade, holding off that attack wouldn't be hard. It turned out to be a trap set by the boy to catch him in his blind spot. Razor then unleashed his divine weapon's power, totally shattering the light blade. Slowly, the picture in its mind begins to blur and disappear. He's sure the boy will never manage to hit him. So far, the fight feels evenly matched, and beating a B-level paladin won't be easy. His main power is running out fast because of his special abilities. This is why the only thing he has left is that final sword. As a seasoned knight, he knew the boy couldn't keep using that power because it comes with a price. He charges forward without mercy, eager to put an end to the fight. His attack missed the boy exactly where he wanted to hit him. But the second blow and the combo landed right on him. His young, weak body simply cannot take the hit. The gap in their strength is becoming a massive edge for them. He could wait forever to end this, but he's too scared to stay in the dark. Knowing close fighting was too risky, he switched to shooting and fired several times, but his opponent managed to dodge every bullet. That was the perfect opening for the boy to spring his surprise attack. Seeing the boy's plan, he knew it wasn't quick enough to work. He simply hadn't planned for the surprise to show up. He used his speed from the shots to get closer, making his blow hit its target even faster. He nearly chopped off his enemy's head, but the mistake just made the enemy even angrier. He taunted his foe into a rage, and was thrilled to see his plan working perfectly. He never saw the last blade coming, so it ended up right through his back. That was a surprise he never saw coming. With a wound so big, he won't be able to keep fighting. Realizing he had the boy beaten and his plan was totally wrong, he walked up to him calmly. He warned him that it was finally over.